Hey, She Slayers, this is a special sample cut from this week's episode. If you find this interesting, be sure to make time to go listen to the entire episode released this past Sunday. And please be sure to help a girl out and follow or subscribe to this podcast. So, then what were some of the what were some of the most important things that you had to decide in order to create this more positive culture? Compared to
Yeah,
because, you were like, "I don't want that,"
great
but
question.
then you're like,
Yeah,
"Well, I haven't seen what I want done. I'm
gosh.
just hypothesizing it's possible."
Um, so yeah, when I first started out, I had no idea. I thought I knew.
How many
I
years have
remember
you
some
been, in private practice like
three,
this? 3?
it's been five and a half,
Okay,
5.5 now.
okay.
So I remember when I graduated residency and I knew I was going to do this, somebody gave me a John Maxwell book and I read it very quickly, thinking that I knew everything there was to know about leadership. And after about the first chapter, I was like, I know nothing about leadership. Opened the practice. Made some hires, which I was very excited about because they looked really good on paper. But because I didn't have any of the appropriate leadership skills, those decisions didn't go well in the beginning. So I made a bunch of mistakes I'm sure all leaders make in the form of communication, expectations, accountability. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I remember sitting around the table with all of the staff we had at the time, which was there was 5 of us, and we opened because we weren't seeing patients except for emergencies. We opened a leadership book together because we had nothing else to do, and we read it. And that's the first time that we were introduced to what's our mission? Like, why are we here? What are we
Mm,
doing? Why are we getting up every day? What values are we going to practice under? Like, what makes us different than anybody else? And then what's the vision in this place? Where are we going? And how are we going to know when we get there? And once we define those 3 things, as a leader, I was able to take my hand off of all of the levers and let like human beings just do what human beings do best, which is do good work and start to really see things turn around and change for the better. Especially as COVID got lifted, we were able to come out of COVID with a kind of a new mission, a new vision, and watch people really thrive in the reasons they were coming to work because it was clear why they were here.
Yeah, I was watching one of your reels that talked about the ABCs of basically
Yeah.
keeping employees around, and A was autonomy. So did you
Mhm.
have to was there a certain ego you needed to let go of? Like, because it sounds like there was a
Oh yeah.
process of trusting them.
Oh yeah, for sure. So one of the hardest lessons to learn for me, and maybe all leaders, but definitely for me, is when you hand something off to someone, they're never going to do it as well as you can.
Mhm.
And so there's typically different leaders have different recommendations, but most people would say if somebody can do something at 70% as well as you can, you should give it to them. What they don't tell you is that you have to be okay with the 70% success rate. And so you'll see somebody turn in something, you're like, gosh, that's not great. I need to take this over. But reminding yourself that no, eventually this is going to be better than I could do it. But the gap between where they are and where they're going to be, which is better than you, is a difficult part to walk through. And honestly, when you're walking through that, how you're holding them accountable. Like, are you being encouraging? Are you being complimentary? Are you being a like supporter? Or are you like detracting and pointing out the flaws and making them feel more negative than positive? So those lessons are ones that only come with time, only come with experience. And so if you don't start practicing them and making the mistakes and then having people that you trust on the team that can like have the grace for you to make those mistakes, you never get through it. Never learn it.
I will get to the B and C or let you share it, but like
Yeah,
the
sure.
problem with that process of letting go control is it's time consuming
Oh yeah.
and you're the one who makes the money.
So,
like,
yeah.
like that's the hard part of being CEO slash the CPT code person. Like I'm
Yeah.
the one
Yeah.
who brings the money in. So how did you, especially being like the sole ENT in there, like how do you find the time to
Hmm.
make sure profitability is there, yet
Right.
also like what kind of like time management are you doing? Like, how are
Yeah.
you just finding that balance of I need to be in the OR, I need to be doing consults and billing, having these billable procedures, but then also my team needs this from me, and that didn't make the business
Mhm.
any money.
Great question. So The first thing I did is and this is going to be really specific to your question, is to calculate what drives the most revenue in my time. Where am I most valuable? And what are things only I can do that no one else can do? And so as a surgeon, I'm the only one that can operate. I'm the only one in the practice that can read radiology that's done in the practice. And there's a couple of so there's a really great book called A CEO Does Great Things, three things, and that is hiring, culture, and making vision decisions. And so if you kind of take those and apply them to a medical practice, I do those things as well. So if I'm going to boil that down, and this is probably different for every practitioner, for me it's surgical, it's radiographical, it's making specific hiring decisions, it's setting the course for the business, and it's being specific about how we're going to get there. Those are very like high level functions business wise and very specific functions medical wise. So that means that doesn't include seeing patients all the time. That
Mhm.
doesn't include doing all the follow-up visits. That doesn't include making all the financial decisions. That doesn't include doing all the billing and coding. That doesn't include making sure patients are checked in and checked out at a certain frequency or type, right? So anything that doesn't require me to do it, those are the things I start to offload. And that is not an easy process. Like it takes
Mhm.
time. And
And
then
money.
also, and money, right? And
Yeah.
then the more time that you're able to free up for yourself for the things that drive revenue in the business. So for me specifically, it's surgical. How do I create more time for me to do surgery? And by doing those exercises, you start to see spots in the schedule where you can be really intentional about adding high value time practice. And then finally, making sure that you're being really, really intentional about the administrative time that you're using. So, for example, today for us in our practice is our administrative day. Now, there are patients that are still being seen, new patients, follow ups, and we have providers doing that. But from an administrative perspective, we concentrate all those conversations into Wednesday morning so that
Mhm.
if anybody needs a piece of advice or anybody needs me to weigh in on something or, you know, figure out the solution to a problem, that there's set aside time for that. There's nothing more frustrating to a practice staff than a provider who's never available but still has high expectations.
Mhm. That is so good. Okay, so talk to me about the B and C of the
Sure.
ABCs of keeping your employees.
Yeah, so this is actually from a book called "Life in the Transitions," and I'm blanking on the author right now, but it's adapted from their book. Um, so B is belonging, right? So if you read any business book, and I would say like the nuts and bolts of business, and I would say like the biggest ones that come to mind, there's a ton of them, is Gino Wickman's EOS, Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited. If you do Business Made Simple by the Blue Like Jazz author, Donald Miller, and there's a couple more. One's called Think Fast and Slow, and one called Four Disciplines of Execution. All of them have the framework and it's not difficult practice. It's pretty basic. It's like what we talked about. Why are we here? What are we doing? And how are we going to do it? That's where the B fits in. B is belonging. People want to feel like they're part of a team, that somebody's got their back, that when they come to work, that the people they're working with is really they're doing it for the right reasons and they're doing it for them, not only for the patients, but they're also there to meet their needs as well. Nobody wants to come to a selfish work environment. Nobody wants to come to a place where everybody's all about themselves. So that A is autonomy, let me do my job and don't micromanage me. B is like I want to belong on as part of a team. Now you can't create a sense of belonging if you don't have a business framework to say to everyone, this is what the team is doing. So this is what the goal line is. We're a football team and we're trying to score a touchdown. What's the field and what's the touchdown?
Mhm. I would imagine because like a lot of your content, the hilarious sides, you kind of have like two different, completely different content pillars. One really
Yeah.
like soulful, meaningful, talking about healthcare burnout. Would that kind of be how you
Yeah,
would
healthcare as it relates to us taking care of those who are really taking care of patients.
Yep. And then the other one is these hilarious skits on like a very ego-focused physician
Mhm.
and his team. And so when you're looking through this lens of belonging, and when I watch those reels, like it's like you are playing this very ego-focused provider. Is that is that intentional? Like, or do you feel like ego is something that gets in the way of a lot of medical providers' like ability to lead a team?
Yeah, ego and a total lack of training on what leadership really is. And that is why like those videos ring so true to so many people because they live those moments all the time. Most of those scenes are based off interactions I've personally witnessed between physicians and their staff or been guilty of myself. And so there
Hindsight's
is an
always 2020. You're like, oh, sorry.
yeah, right. And so there is a real there's a real unfortunate deficit among especially surgeons and myself included in being able to like understand the impact of their words and actions on their team and on their patients. And so the purpose of all that content, I mean, the purpose of the comedic content is to really connect with people that we're trying to connect with, right? Not only providers, but also the healthcare workers, people that are in these situations all the time that struggle with this stuff, but they do it because they love patients. So the entire impetus for the comedic is like basically, hey, healthcare people, we see you. And
Hmm.
we want you to know that we understand what you're going through and then try to provide some context of like, hey, like maybe there's a solution to this if we all can kind of put our heads together.
Right. Okay. So then the C of ABC.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Cause is like, why are we here? What are we doing? And so if you want me to do something and we're going to do it together, what is it that we're doing and why? What is the goal line? And I didn't believe this when people first told me, but if you allow any human being, and I would say 99.999% of them, a opportunity to do good work, they will almost always do it. And so if you're just like, all right, this is where I want to go as an organization, this is where I want to go as a team, and this is, I think, how we're going to get there. People are desperate for that type of an environment of this is why I go to work. This is why I'm doing this. I didn't have to think of it on my own. I'm not just here because we're trying to help people for this vague reason, but it's specific to this reason and this is what success looks like. People will get out of bed for that. People will stop missing work for that. People won't call out sick for that. People will go above and beyond for that. And they'll really develop a sense of like what Jeff Bezos calls work-life harmony, right? So if people are at their best selves at work, they're going to be their best selves at home. If people are working 1,000 hours a week and doing it because they think it's the right thing to do because patients need them, that's what causes burnout, and that's what
Hmm.
leads to a terrible work-life harmony or a terrible home life. And then we start to blame like work-life balance, right? Our work life's out of
Hmm.
balance. Well, it's out of balance because the type of work that we have is not creating great life.